Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Brian and Mr. Boettcher for Breaking Down Security.
Yo.
So this week's been a very, very trying week for us. We are still constantly fighting that PCI monster, being what it is, but we're slowly taming that beast, and it's going to be better next week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's grinding to a close.
Well, it wasn't all PCI. I mean, we did have, doing a little bit of threat modeling, which we hope to have an interesting interview soon with somebody who can help us understand secure development and threat modeling. So that was always nice, doing something a little outside the ordinary.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it should be a part of every security organization, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it helps if your developers understand that people who are bad are not always going to follow the rules when visiting the site. So things like making sure your browser supports certain browser types or levels is nice if you want it to look pretty, but from a security standpoint, you want to make sure that your site is as secure as possible, not as secure as Internet Explorer 6, for instance.
Right. You can't assume that everybody out there is going to play nice and follow your rules.
Yeah.
So it's nice to explain that to someone, and it kind of clicks for them. It goes, oh, really? Okay. Mm-hmm. And that whole, our site is only supporting these browsers. Well,
See, that I think that's where people get confused. It only supports that site to look pretty. The functionality of the site is only supporting from a certain level. Your browser is going to maybe old, like most sites are still supporting IE6 because that's the way they built it. But security is constantly moving target, so you want to be able to support those older browsers, but at the same time you have to protect the data that is being shown on the screen if it's coming from, say, a database, if you will. But, at some point, if you have an IE6 browser that you're supporting, you begin to get to the point where you're not just protecting that data, but you also have to protect the user because his browser is old, and it's often not by choice.
Yeah, I see where you're going, and developers, does your website support Shodan? No? Well, sorry, it doesn't have to.
Shodan? Did you misspeak?
No.
What's Shodan? He asked. I know what Shodan is. I know. I have a membership to Shodan. It's a nice little search engine that allows you to fingerprint websites and search for open ports on things like routers and stuff.
Yeah, it's a scanner. It goes out, grabs banners for like you said, it scans open ports on publicly available websites and does a banner grab and caches them or stores them. So you can go to Shodan and you can do a search for, let's say, a new vulnerability came out today. You may be able to do a Shodan search and find all the websites that are that have that version of that application, and then you can start hacking away at those sites. You could, depending on the vulnerability, you can get a huge list of vulnerable websites just right there. You don't even have to touch them. You don't even have to do any, mapping of the site. You don't have to scan them on your own. You just start attacking it.
Wait a minute. That sounds like Reconnaissance.
Why, yes, it is. And hey, good you mentioned that. That's the topic of our discussion today, Reconnaissance.
Shut up. You mean I made a segue that works?
Hey, you worked on it. Last time your segue was awful.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so yeah, for just to bring our listeners back into the fold here, we're talking about Reconnaissance this week, which is one of the 4 steps of doing most people say a proper, in quoted fingers, quote unquote, pen test. That'd be the first one, reconnaissance, followed by mapping, discovery, and then exploitation. So
Right.
this week,
Four
the
phases.
whole that's right, 4 phases, and it's pretty much what they call a pen tester. There's it's called
Methodology.
PTES. Yeah, pen tester methodology. That's right. So, yep.
Ding ding.
So me and Mr. Boettcher were talking about it for the podcast, and I said that I found reconnaissance. One, you don't do a lot of reconnaissance when you're in classes because it's not exactly what I would consider something that's very reproducible, maybe, because you do enter a gray area that you can't go, well, I want you to go do reconnaissance on company XYZ. Well, there's not really a company XYZ out there to use it as an example. And, I find that a lot of people who are doing pen tests for a living as a consultant or whatever, when you come in, you're getting information from the company or the application creator or what have you.
Okay.
So there's really not a need to do reconnaissance, in my opinion, unless you're using for like social engineering.
Yeah, well, I think that's where you're wrong, my friend. I think reconnaissance is much more important to pen testers, and I don't think pen testers do enough reconnaissance.
Really?
I think it's hard to bring that into a class and help teach it or whatever, but there's dozens of tools out there to help you do reconnaissance that were made by pen testers. And we can talk about some of those, but I think it's much more important for both red teamers and blue teamers because, people will reveal information. That's a given.
Sure.
You know, and let's talk about Google or search engines, for example. A lot of information is out there on these search engines. They go collect all this interesting data, and then they hand that data off to hackers. Right?
Sure.
And they even cache that data too.
Oh yeah. Well, you mentioned caching data. I think the Internet Wayback Machine was one of the first sites I ever found that actually does, snapshotting of websites. It trolls the internet and actually has quite a bit of old sites like GeoCities and whatever, before they blew up. But if you are going to if you're looking for a website that you're testing, a lot of times you can go to that Wayback Machine, put in the URL of the site itself, and get an old version of the site.
Sure. And it could give you, like you say, breadcrumbs. It can give you information on how good their security program is. Because if they, if a vulnerability for whatever application they're running that's publicly available, they didn't update it till maybe a year or two later, they probably don't have that good of a security program, and they might be an easy target for hackers. Now it's important to note that reconnaissance is performed without even touching the target. All right? Once you're touching the target, you're getting into the other phases of the pen test methodology. So what we're talking about is doing research on the company, the target, the people, without even, it's like I said, public knowledge. The company, for hackers, the company's not even going to know that they're becoming a target. They can't detect it. And a lot of times when proper reconnaissance is done and some exploit is found, the first thing that the company is going to see if they're doing any kind of detection is the attack itself. They're not going to see any, say we talked about SQL map the other day. They're not going to see all these attempts at SQL injection and then finally an exploit performed. They're probably going to see that exploit. That's the first thing they see. It's going to happen quick if proper reconnaissance is done and exploits are found that way.
Yeah. Now, I say that I don't think reconnaissance is important when doing a pen test, but I still think that there is a need for doing some kind of reconnaissance. I flex my reconnaissance muscles. I've been doing Google searches for years. I find I don't ask questions of people. A lot of it is just understanding how a search engine works. Looking at certain queries, forming queries properly in web search engines like Bing, or they have aggregator ones called like Dogpile, or I used one called Vivissimo one time, or Wolfram Alpha is another good one. I never ask somebody a question like when I'm on Facebook and I go, I don't know what that is. Instead of replying to the Facebook message, hey, what is the tallest mountain in Africa?
Yeah.
I don't ask them what that is. I go and I Google search, or I Bing search it, or whatever the hell they want to call it over there, because that puts me into a mindset of starting to look for the answer myself.
Sure. And that could, where are you going with that?
I was just saying that, you get a lot of people on the internet and they're like, oh, I don't know how to do something XYZ. One of the things I've been telling people for years is there's no original question.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a problem or you have an error message on an application where, an error message comes up like, I don't know, like you get a Windows error code or something, and instead of asking somebody, you should go and try to Google the exact error message, because somebody has come up with this problem prior and have done their due diligence to try to find the answer. And the answer's out there. You just have to do research on it. And, man pages mostly, it's all out there. And as long as you're doing your due diligence to, Google search, that's reconnaissance too. It's just not what you would expect to be using on a pen test. But that kind of primes the mind for thinking about how to do your research when you're doing reconnaissance.
Okay,
I can go to these places to search for these things.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because that can get your company into trouble also. Here's a scenario. One of your developers has a problem with their code. They take your advice. They go to a news group and they say, hey, I'm having a problem with my code. Here's a dump of my source code. Can anybody help me with this particular problem? And then people go, hey, why don't you do this? And the guy's like, okay, thanks. And I think Kevin Johnson mentioned this to us, where he found an example of that. And then so you got your source code and the problem was fixed, but you can see that there's classic SQL injection in the code. So there it is for all the world to see, your code on the internet with SQL injection exploitable.
Okay, I was hoping that you wouldn't take it to that nth degree, but developer, it's all about what you intend to share. If I share the fact that, I'm running MySQL and it says can't connect to socket mysql.sock or something, and I don't have a clue as to what that error message is, I can take that error message, pop it into Bing or put it into Google, and somebody has had that answer before. Now, I would totally agree with you that is bad. And pen testers and black hat hackers and everybody love when developers just prop their code up there on like DannyWeb.com, or, in a Google group or something that gets archived forever and a day. I totally agree. So if you're a developer, please don't paste your code to Google, especially don't do it using your work email. If you're going to share that kind of code, make sure you obfuscate your name or something and use a Gmail account or some kind of throwaway account where you can at least maybe not trace things, make it traceable back to you and or your company, because that would be bad.
Yeah, and sometimes even if you do try to do that, there's a lot of things that, are searchable. Like there's a bunch of websites you can go to that will do reconnaissance on people and find all their email addresses, right? Find out if they have any trouble with the law, arrest records, social media data, get their address. You can get key employees, you can get their address, then war drive at their house and try to hack into their home network and see if you can garner information about the company there, or try to hack into their company from there, using their VPN account.
Yeah,
I
I do that from time to time now. I was prior military, and I've lost contact with some of the people I served with. So I do use sites like I've used Spokeo, Spokeo, which is it's a people aggregator site. Now, of course, they want you to pay for the full unlocked version, so they give you only certain pieces of the information. What I found works well is using more than one of these searches, because, like, say, Spokeo will give you name, address, age, and where they've lived in the last 2 years. And if you use another one like I don't know, I've used Pipl, P-I-P-L, or People in this case.
Yep.
That's another good one. Yeah. They'll give you different information. Like, they'll give you name, age, phone number, and whether or not they paid their taxes last year or something. So you don't have to necessarily pay for these services as long as you use more than one, which is why I often use more than one search engine, because based on the algorithms they use, you'll sometimes get different answers for your errors, or for when you're looking for people. And like we were talking earlier, that helps. A lot of companies want to do social engineering attacks, and those kinds of sites are often good because you can find out things that maybe that person didn't know they were sharing, or maybe they don't know their friends are actually sharing that information about, like where they graduated high school or where they graduated college. You might actually be able to find out people's password recovery functions with those kinds of sites if they say, well, where did you go to high school at?
Yeah, you look on their social media accounts. There's a site that has, it finds, you type in a person's name and it finds all their social media accounts, so you can friend them or sign up to be, Twitter, follow them, whatever, and find out a lot more about them. I have a list that I got from the FBI, and it has a bunch of, what it was a bulletin that said, hey, there's a bunch of hackers, not really hackers, they're building a botnet, and here's how they do it. They use these search queries. So basically they do Google hacking, and so they type in, and I have a list, it's like, let's see how many it is. 183 search queries that they use to find exploitable websites. So basically it's called Google dorking or Google hacking. They type in the query and they find all of the sites that are exploitable. So they go in the site, they hack into it, and they either use that site for their botnet, or they put malware on the site and use it, to propagate their botnet, right?
Yeah. So it's like a poor man's Shodan or something, where they can.
No, it's basically Google dorking, right? They find exploitable websites. That's, and so what I did was I typed in all of these into Google, and then some keywords for, the company that I'm trying to protect. So I do the opposite. Well, I do the same thing, but I look and see if my company is exploitable by these things as well, or it's publicly available. And that's what all blue teamers should do, and that's why recon is very important to defend your company. You got to find out what the hackers are finding out about your company.
So what's an example of one of these things? You said you had like 300, you said?
183.
183. Okay, so you have 183 different query strings that people could use on Google, presumably, to find vulnerable websites.
Yeah. So basically, most of them are, you type in URL : and then something like HTML tonuke.php. Okay. And that'll be one of the exploits. Right. So then it'll give you a list of the sites. And like I said, there's 183 of them that I've been given, and I'm sure there's thousands more that you could use, and just, do a little recon on your own company. Type in that, and then, let's say you have a site and all the pages are named a certain way. You type in that name and go from there.
Yeah. Other forms of reconnaissance, I think, is maybe if you're doing a pen test and you want to find out like where all the branch offices for a specific organization are. Like you've been asked to, do physical security attacks, see if you can get in the front door past somebody, and you may not necessarily know where everybody is in that organization, or if, let's say it's like a healthcare system or something.
Okay.
And so they say, okay, yeah, try to get in, but they forget to tell you where all the branch locations are. You may want to do a Google search or a reconnaissance search to find out, they give you 15 addresses of offices, but there may be 17 offices in the healthcare system. So you can go back and go, well, do you want me to test these as well? So I like that. I like the idea of going back, because was it you told me that story about the double checking the information you're getting during engagements to make sure that it's all correct. Otherwise you could be in trouble.
Sure. Like if somebody says, well, we own this network or this site or address, right? This public address space. And you go and look up, you look up DNS records and, it shows some other company, right? Sure. Then you may be trying to attack some other company. So it's always good to double check and see if their information is accurate. Or they may have, two different networks associated with them, then they never told you about it and you never tested it, right? And they probably, maybe they forgot about it, or maybe they just weren't aware that they had all these other sites, that were old and there before, management or whoever it is, security team got there. You never know. So it's always important to do recon on the site you're testing. Back to the defense side, Google Alerts is a really good tool for you to use. You can set your search query, and then you could be alerted when that query gets a hit. Right?
Yeah, sure.
So you can, if for some reason, you have some rogue system out on the internet, Google finds it, and then they can alert you to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So look up Google Alerts. They're a great tool for defense.
Yep. Now, if you've got coin to spend, we were talking about people searches and those kinds of things. Going to the free sites like Spokeo and Pipple, there's also other like for paid versions of databases. Like you have LexisNexis, I know is one that I've heard of in the past for doing background searches. You can also get access to financial records like SEC filings and stuff in various databases that will allow you to know if, say, a company has put out new technology that would help you during your pen test. Like you could find out what the functionality of that software does.
Yep.
You might also look at monster.com or something if the company's hiring. They might be hiring, looking for like J2EE developers or something like that. So you would know almost immediately that maybe what I'm looking at or what I'm going to be pen testing is a Java based program, or they're looking for Linux administrators. Well, that should be pretty noticeable that you've got Linux on the network at some point. Maybe they're using it on or Cisco engineers. We need Cisco engineers, so you know that they're probably running Cisco kit in their office for the most part.
Sure, job boards are a good way to, for hackers to tell what, operating systems, databases, types of network equipment, like you said.
Yep. Whois is also a good way to get. You can do Whois lookup records. Will give you names of people. We'll give you email addresses. The problem I found with some of those, and I've done this recently with some of the audits that I've been doing if you're attacking a company and they give you an IP address range and they're, say, using Amazon for EC2.
Okay.
You're not going to get any real good information on a whois record at that point, because I have done more than one whois search on more than one whois site, because I found that like certain websites will give you some more information or will have the actual record, whereas one will be more generic. And it's, it's like I go to this one site and it tells me something that the second site doesn't, or I'll go to the second site and it tells me something that the first site doesn't. I don't know if it's not like DNS where it's you have 10 or 15 servers all over the country with that kind of thing. It seems like some whois services don't do full updates of their whois records. So it often behooves you to look at more than one whois service to find out if it's like the people search stuff. You'd want to look at more than one place if you're getting a dead end on one. So don't give up immediately if you can't necessarily find something to begin with.
That's right.
Got to be tenacious with your recon, especially if you're doing something like social engineering where you need to get in, you need to be able to hack someone, and finding out that the CEO was used to go to Boston College, for instance, or is a big football player or something like that, is often helpful when you're using, say, your social engineering toolkit or Maltego if you're trying to track down some John Smith. Well, okay, which John Smith could it be? You need as much information as you can on targets in the company so that you can narrow it down to a specific person.
Now, should you do recon on your employees as far as, trying to find out what they're doing on social media and stuff?
I don't know. You kind of hit a gray area there. I mean, I'm of the opinion that you should, unless it's to a detriment. Man, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Well, I mean they probably would have found Edward Snowden if he'd, they would have probably found him if they'd have been monitoring the employees a little better.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly opens up an attack vector. If certain employees are disgruntled and they're, or they could be posting information about the company that is sensitive.
Sure. And most people these days, they don't have a problem with friending people they work with. So obviously if you're posting stuff on your Facebook page and you work with people that feel differently about security, you may end up having people self-police themselves because they may censor themselves because they don't want somebody seeing what they're doing. Because I see a lot of that on Facebook, like people telling me what they are doing at work or people they work with. One lady I know has a nickname for their coworker named Gravy. I don't know why, but it's called she calls her Gravy, and you find out that kind of information. I don't think that's a term of endearment, but you could often use that stuff for blackmail even. If somebody's posting secrets, or you find out about, and that could be the gray area that I'm talking about for companies. Maybe the company's not very scrupulous and they would say, okay, you're doing something you shouldn't be, or we don't like your lifestyle. It starts getting ambiguous at that point, I think, if you were trying to monitor your own employees for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that work should be done. A lot of the recon should be done before you hire somebody.
You should be doing background checks if you're in a position where you need to worry about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there's there's some sites that only focus on social websites, the social life of people. So something that kind of set me off this week was this article that was posted, and I guess I got a news blast or whatever. And the guy that wrote the article says basically, should you or should you not do a pen test? And so he says, in an enterprise environment, phase 1, which is reconnaissance, is already covered. the enterprise should know their publicly available information before it's made public, right? So in other words, if you have confidential information, the company, marks it as confidential, and so that information shouldn't get leaked out. So they're going to know when it gets leaked out because they'll mark it as not confidential anymore and it can be made public. So his whole point is, if you're in an enterprise environment, you really don't need to do recon. It's already covered. It's covered by policies of the company.
Well, it seems like he's assuming that the companies in question, or that he assumes that all companies already have a data classification policy or procedure in place that says, okay,
well, I think most companies do. My point is, you don't know what's out there.
True.
Right? Unless you, if you do scanning on these search engines, right? Like Shodan, like Google. If you use tools like Google Alerts or the Harvester, Recon NG is another one.
Yeah, Landmaster.
Recon is highly important. It's part of the pentest methodology for a reason, right? It gives hackers easy wins, right? Criminals can get, hold of something gold that they find with recon that just blows you out of the water, And you take it, taking it for granted can cost you.
Yeah,
right.
But we were talking about reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is going to be, we talk about pen tester methodology as being, steps, like, step 1 is recon, step 2 is whatever. I don't really see that methodology as being a step by step by step thing. I think that's more of a fluid kind of thing. It's not really a, you're never going to go back to recon after you get to the mapping part of the application. I think all of these steps are going to be, I don't know, I would almost say it's like steps when you're trying to memorize a dance or something. When you're learning how to dance a waltz or something, you're going to go 1 2 3 2 3 1 1 2 3 2 3 2 3 2 3.
Okay, you lost me. You lost me on the waltz thing. But anyway, I think I get your point that you could go into mapping, see something interesting, and then go, do some more reconnaissance on that particular item. Like if you find something commented out, like you're using, some open source code, that says go to www.myopensourcecode.com for more information on blah 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 XYZ. Then you can go look for it and find if there's any exploits for it, right? You found that in mapping or discovery phase, but then you go do some more recon on that particular item. See if anybody else found vulnerabilities on that. See if there's an upgrade to it.
Or you're walking through mapping a server and you find port 1721 open, and you're like, well, I don't know what that is, or it should be open. Let's say you're using Nmap, and Nmap goes, hey, you've got TFTP running on this port, and you're like, well, that doesn't sound like the right port for TFTP. And then you find out either it's a non-standard port where they're running the daemon there to be sneaky, or there's a malware running on that box. So you can find out if there's malware running on that specific port, and you're going to find that a lot, I think, where you're going to go back and forth between all the steps. Recon, you're always going to be surfing the web for something, or you're always going to need help on something. You're going to be looking in a forum for X, or that kind of thing. I think that I don't really want to call it a methodology, because when I think methodology, I think processes. And I think recon is going to be something you're going to be doing during the entire pen test, just like mapping and discovery. I think you're going to be doing all of these things all of the time during the process.
Well, not necessarily. You pretty much want to start with recon, and you want to spend a lot of time on recon, right, in a pen test.
Well, how much time do you want to? How much time do you think you should spend on it?
Well, it
Because I've
depends
seen a
on.
lot of things. I've seen like, spend 40 minutes on something and then get started on something else, or, look for something and then if you can't find it after 3 tries, go on to something else because, you're not going to find it. Or, I mean, if you were doing a pen test, how much time would you spend on recon before you just said, I found all I can, I
De-
should go on?
Depending on the company, probably 20%.
So on a 40-hour pen
Depending.
test, let's say they gave you 40 hours, you would spend what, 8 hours? You would spend a whole day doing recon?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of time.
It depends on the test. It depends on what your goal is or what they
Mm-hmm.
want you to do. I mean, obviously, if you're just pen testing a certain application and that's it,
Yeah.
there's probably not much recon you can do. You can go look for that application. You can go download, you can go to the website of the vendor of that application and see if they have a 10-day free trial. Hey, download this, and then you'd
Mm-hmm.
install it and see what it takes to install it, what the default accounts are, all that stuff.
That's true.
That's
That's true.
part of reconnaissance. I would say spend 20% of your time on that.
Yeah.
I'm not a pen tester, but it seems like it's really important. And a lot of pen testers today don't do reconnaissance. They just go in and try to pop a bunch of boxes
Well,
right away.
it's not glamorous. It's like code audits or process, you know, documentation looking at and
It's doing research. I mean, you got to do your
yeah.
research.
Yeah, it's
You
kind
can
of
end up
kind of
looking
boring.
like a golden boy, right? If you do proper research and get an easy win and say, look,
Sure.
you've got source code on the internet. Oh my God, no, say it ain't so. You know,
True.
that's huge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that's something that they're caring about, or if it's something that they're doing, I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, that does
Or,
make a lot of
or I've
sense.
got
Would you
all the
would you want
names and
to?
email addresses of all your employees, things like that. You can find a lot of juice on somebody
That's
or
true.
companies.
Yeah. Yeah, finding that kind of information would be helpful doing for social engineering stuff. Yeah, if you could find emails without having to.
And there's tools that I forgot the name, but there's tools that you can type in a company and it'll go search for potential email addresses of employees based on their names. You know, break B at XYZ, Brian.B at XYZ, Brian.break at XYZ, it goes
Yeah.
through all that.
Hmm. So would you, if you're doing a pen test, would you run like automated scans at the same time you're doing these things? Because it seems to me you would run like maybe an Nmap or something on the servers in question, or would you just strictly do reconnaissance?
I'd probably do, well, again, it depends on the test. If we're only supposed to scan one website or pen test one website, there's not a lot of mapping you can do on that. I mean, you can
Yeah.
map the site itself, but you're not going to be mapping, the entire network because there's only one IP address. But yeah, I mean, you could kick off a scan and keep doing your recon, but
Yeah.
there's probably plenty of time to run the scan as you're mapping the site.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe we could, maybe run it like that.
Yeah,
Um,
it doesn't really matter. I guess it's based on your preference. But the important thing I want to get across is for the blue teamers out there, do reconnaissance on your own company. I think it's very important. You might be surprised what's out there.
yeah, we talk about the red team side a lot. That a lot of what is being done by red teamer, even blue teamer stuff. The good thing about being a blue teamer is you've got almost infinite time to do that stuff. If you just wanted to, you get bored one night at home and you want to find out. I would be careful about what you're searching or how deep you want to go. But if you're looking for let's say you're a developer and you actually have access to code. If you could do a Google search for specific code snippets, I think so that way you could find out if, you've got people posting stuff to forum sites or.
But the idea behind Recon is you're not actually hitting the site. It's all there on the net. You just got to go find it. It's public.
What would happen if you found something, though? Is this something where you would want to have permission or have a get out of jail free card if you said, hey, I was searching around and hey, boss, I found you were doing X on the internet?
Well, that gets into personal stuff versus, company things, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about searching people. Oh, I found out that, you were arrested for stealing, somebody's credit card information or you have a felony.
Well, that might be.
We don't want that guy on our. I mean.
Well, that's something you might worry about if you are working at, I don't know, a retailer, and you found out that, you've got somebody you work with has been, convicted of passing bad checks or identity theft. The last thing you want them to do is to be working at a place where they would have access to multiple possible identities of customers. But if they didn't disclose that during a background check, at what point do we say, okay, yeah, we need to let management know? Or, is that going to disrupt, operations if we are poking around inside and finding these things?
Yeah, well, there's a difference between, doing recon on individuals and doing recon on your own company. I guess you'd have to follow the HR policies of your company and get permission to do so on individuals. But, you
stumble across a lot of things.
You could. Yeah, and especially the paid sites where you can just type in somebody's name and get, I think there's like 20 different categories that they search for on people. It's crazy. Yeah. And you
marriage,
get that all
divorce,
within
bankruptcy,
or even
criminal records, sex offender records,
relatives, all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah,
like spouse, if their spouse has a criminal record. Yeah, there's a lot of juicy tidbits you could garner out there on people.
Yeah,
it's kind of scary. Look up yourself. You never know what other people could find about you.
Yeah, I do that from time to time, just to find out. It used to be all brake stores, like brake shops, where people would take their cars to get their brakes repaired. But since I kind of got big on the internet,
you've refined that a little bit.
Yeah, it's been refined a little bit, and I'm starting to pop up more in Google searches than prior. So, yeah. But yeah, it used to be like, oh, you're Google vain or whatever by searching for yourself on Google. But I like to find out also what my friends are sharing about me, which could end up being used in a pen test later on. That kind of thing.
Friends or not so friendly friends.
Yeah, exactly.
What you're saying, you're kind of a big deal now?
Kind of a big deal on the internet. I know people. They know me. That kind of thing. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I fully agree with everything you said. And
that's good. Write this down. Okay. Today is... You fully agree with everything I said. Wow.
What a smart ass. Okay. So we will have links to... I'm going to edit that out.
No, you're not.
We're going to have links to some of the sites that we talked about tonight with the searching for people and for organizations. We might even have a few more if I can remember what they were. I know that there was one on being able to search like SEC filings and stuff like that, so you can find out information on how much people made every year.
Or mergers, hey, this company merged with that one, so why don't you go hack the other one, because they probably, or they may not be as secure, and you can... First thing a company does when they merge is try and get their networks talking together, and maybe they're in a hurry, something like that, and they don't implement security controls as robustly as they should.
Yep, or third-party vendors. If you do an SEC filing and find out that they're using certain HVAC company, or if they're using a certain accounting firm, you might go a back way through the accounting firm to get into the information network, or state agencies, for instance, to get into an organization if they have a point-to-point kind of site thing. So yeah, we'll have some links to some of those things as well. So any closing thoughts, Mr. Boettcher?
No, I've said it, what I wanted to say. I mean, to keep your company, or to have your company be more secure, do recon on your company. I think it's very important.
Yep. That's really, yeah. I think that's the gist of the message today, and that's something that should be done. I would, definitely do it on the company, not so much on individual people in the company, unless you are. That's the scope of what you're doing for, say, a pen test or something. But
and if you're
blue teamer, should just be doing it on the company as a whole.
And if you're looking for a pen tester, if you're going to hire a pen tester and they don't do a good job, or you ask them about recon and they say it's not that important, maybe you should look into getting another pen tester. I mean, depending on what you're testing, that's one thing. But if they're testing your external websites, definitely they need to be doing recon. I mean,
it might be good to even ask that question to the pen tester when he's doing the unveiling or the findings. You'd be like, "What did you find on the internet about us?" That might be something they want to do too. And if they look at you like, "Oh, well, you have a website," it's probably not good enough.
Yeah, not good enough.
They might have missed something. So yeah, that's something else to think about when you're getting your pen test results. So. Well, I guess that was it for this week. That was a nice little talk we had, and we always like hearing feedback from people. We're doing this podcast for you and you, the listener, and our fans. So if you have any feedback, please feel free to leave it on our Twitter handles at BoetcherPwned, at Brian Brake, all one word. We have a Facebook page. It's actually got about 3,900 followers now. I don't know if that's people that I've paid off to actually like the page, or if they actually like the page.
I don't know.
I'm no Daddy Warbucks, man. They've actually liked it, and I actually have people liking the articles, so that's kind of cool. I post our podcast articles, but I also post articles of interest from a security bent.
Uh-huh.
Like when Black Hat or Arsenal comes out, we post articles and news articles for that. So, we're on Google+, we're on LinkedIn. If you want to link into us, we appreciate the feedback, and we love having you listen. So, feel free to come back next week. We're going to be here with another awesome podcast, and that's been it this week for Breaking Down Security. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.